I'd like to call to order the January 2025 Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed Board meeting. First order on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Perfect. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Moving forward, this is a consent agenda. Remember, we can ask questions or have a discussion after we have a motion on the table. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved with a point of clarification, Mr. Chair. Point of clarification is the word manager is misspelled significantly throughout the consent, but it's the holiday season, so
Okay.
Many of the managers are referred to as manger.
On the minutes, in the minutes. Where's the holiday season?
Yeah.
I just looked for my last name. I did. That's a good catch.
Thank you.
No other references.
Oh, yeah, there's that.
There we go.
Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. Can I have a second?
Second.
So we can have some discussion. Any manager have a question?
I have let me find it. I believe it's page 24, the Pioneer Park stormwater reuse. Can you remind me what that one is for?
The project?
No, the progress payment.
So that's for the reuse project that we visited.
Okay.
Yep, so that's the
So-
payment for the contractor for the work that was done.
And the change order? Yes, that's it.
That was part, so those were previously approved change orders, yeah.
I think that was last month. Good question. I do have a question on permit 2501. So I drove by that area. It looked like it was a park beforehand. It had like a baseball field. I believe. Not that this has to change the permit, but as you're working with the construction group, could you encourage them? There's a lot of really nice trees in the back to that lot, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
Just to hey, could you do some level of retaining that whole area now is what appears to be a lot of impervious, and so just that'd be nice.
I actually, not to put him on the spot, but Robbie, who's attending virtually, is from Civil Site Group and he's here for the Aragon Apartments. Robbie, do you happen to know any details about, it's not really related?
Yeah, hi, Robbie Latta, Civil Site Group. I'm trying to, if you don't mind, just quick pull up the site and get an idea. There is some area down in the back of the lot to the far east of the lot that is not being disturbed.
Okay, good. It wasn't clear in the drawing, honestly, Robbie, so I was just kind of curious. I know it's an L shape, and so I was thinking that southeast corner, there's a lot of really nice trees there.
Southeast corner, there is a good amount of area in that southeast corner that we're not proposing to be disturbed.
Okay.
I can't certainly guarantee that.
That's perfect. That's great. I just
Okay.
wanted to just check on it because
The
I've
grading
driven by there a
plan.
couple of times.
Yeah, it has like the limits of disturbance in that sort of dashed solid black line. So everything east of there is not proposed to be impacted.
Very good. So as I looked at the actual permit area versus this, that's where I was
Oh,
kind of confused.
sure.
So
Yeah. Because it's part of the parcel. Yeah.
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks, Robbie.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question on the same project, same permit.
Okay.
The design includes a subsurface infiltration system.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of detail in terms of the design of that. Is that a large rock creating pore space? It's not a subsurface basin, and I think that wouldn't be a infiltration. Make comment, go more about the design.
Yeah, absolutely. I can fill in a little bit more detail on that. That is a subsurface basin with a corrugated metal pipe structure, and that's surrounded by stone for its bedding and its backfill. And that basin is the pipe is perforated, that the corrugated metal pipe is perforated, so it also does use the stone as storage volume.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Where is it proposed to be located?
Underneath the drive aisle at the south end of the site.
See those two dashed line kind of rectangles on the south end there.
If you take
Okay, I see those. I guess I didn't
Yeah.
take note of the labeling, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize if there's any clarity issues.
No, I only usually include like a grading plan, and a utility plan has more information, which we have as staff, but I never know how much to include in the packet, so.
Truthfully, I think we're all still learning how to read some of the building plans.
Yeah.
It's just an ongoing learning adventure.
Sure.
I just had one, again, question and clarification. The applicant, there's the last sentence in 2502 on the linear cost cap for stormwater treatment of the rate application fee time wrap. Could you just help me digest that statement?
It's kind of a interesting case. So for this Ramsey County Road D project, they originally actually applied for this permit and we completed a round of review in July of 2023. And we provided comments and all of that, and they were pretty far into design. And then we don't really know why, but there was a significant, obviously, amount of time before we heard from them again. So when they came back with revisions, they're like, here's your original comments. This is what we're addressing in our revisions. And they were still using the old calculation because 5 months after they applied for the permit originally, we increased the linear cost cap. So to acknowledge that they were already budgeted and well into design at that time, we didn't require them to meet what would be considered the current cost cap. We sort of grandfathered them into when they applied for the permit originally. But it is a very unusual case.
Yeah, I didn't understand how to interpret it, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions for the consent agenda? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Perfect. Moving right along. Robbie, yours was approved. You're welcome to stay if you'd like.
Wonderful. Thank you. I hope you all have a nice night.
Thanks.
You too, Robbie. Thank you.
Good night.
Glenn Wilson is from the CAC.
Oh, from the CAC.
Oh,
Thank
thank you.
Yep. Wasn't registered.
So, any visitor comments? There's no visitors in the room. I'm gonna go ahead and proceed forward to item number 5 on the agenda, the permit program. Back to you all.
So the normal sort of monthly memo is a little bit shorter this month due to the sort of seasonality of construction sites slowing down, but also wanting to lend more time to the annual discussion of the permit program, which follows the enforcement report. So if there are any questions on the first part, enforcement report, I can answer those first. But not a lot. So the next sort of memo is something I've been including in board packet for 5+ years. I include previous years' numbers in this memo for purposes of context and to identify any trends that I'm seeing. But just wanted to generally summarize our program over 2024. I can answer questions about any of these numbers, but I think what's pretty significant is a sharp increase in the number of permit applications we received. Also a sharp increase in the number of construction site inspections that we completed. There is an increase in the percent of inspection reports that were found to be non-compliant here. We also had an increase in WACA or wetland applications. Kind of a similar number of active sites that we were inspecting this year, but still it's a substantial amount. I listed the 5 most common violations that we observed in 2024. This is very consistent with previous years. Some of them change order, but pretty much the top 5 remain the top 5. But yeah, as far as trends and observations, like I mentioned, an observable increase in the percent of non-compliant inspections. I think that reflects sort of a broad trend of poor maintenance. And we noted more violations this year for lack of self-inspection. Construction sites are required to self-inspect weekly and after every half inch of rain, which brings me to the next point. We actually had a rainy season this year after 2 years of very dry conditions. So whether that took people by surprise, I don't know. It certainly kept their staff and our staff busy. And then we had a couple of large complex sites with a lot of acreage that I just wanted to mention that Mary was working on this year, the Gold Line and the Heights, which we're all familiar with. But despite all this, we had that substantial increase in inspections, close to 600 inspections done by Kendra and Mary this year. So that's huge. Certainly the most inspections we've ever had in a field season. So that's awesome and kudos to them. I stepped back from construction site inspections this year and did wetland field work, but this is the first year that I didn't really do any construction sites. So that was all these 2 here. And then just to note that increase in grading permit applications, I had to look back. We had the most applications we've had in 20 years. So I was like, this feels busy. And I looked and sure enough, and that was during Tina's tenure as permit coordinator. So. The active sites by project type, that's meant to say 2024. So that's a typo, I apologize. But just wanted to give an idea of kind of the kinds of projects that we're inspecting a lot of right now, and last year is a lot of residential. So a lot of apartment buildings, single family townhome projects. In past years, like when I was doing a lot of inspections, there'd be like a couple years where it was pretty much like all these senior living facilities. And then we had a few years of a bunch of schools getting redone because I think there were, levy or budget approvals that happened. So just kind of interesting, but now it's pretty heavy residential at the moment. And then just some general updates, like I mentioned, January 1st of 2024, so a year ago, we increased that linear cost cap and stormwater impact fund. That was actually approved last fall, but went into effect in January. Kendra joined our team in the spring as a seasonal intern, and then, as you all know, in August, accepted an offer to add to our permanent staff. So now we are a staff of 3.
But she's not still on trial?
Yeah.
So that's a big thing for the permit program. I don't think we've ever had 3 full-time staff. So, and with the busy year we had, I'm very grateful. Yeah, I could answer any questions that you have about numbers, trends.
All that, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
If I may. Of course. It seems like all of the metrics, all the numbers were higher.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to sort out, there are more, we had more staff than we've ever had in this program. It seems like there was a lot of activity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to sort out, is the increase in projects and increase in staff both contributing to the increase in overall increase in numbers, or is there a greater efficiency in terms of being able to manage all those projects now having the greater amount of staff?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, which
Yeah.
are you guys super busy because all these projects coming in, or are you super busy because you now have the resources to maybe even do a couple of additional visits to some of these complex sites that in the
Yeah.
past you might not have been able to do.
Yeah, I think, well, we had a fairly similar amount of active sites in our district, but yeah, with additional staff, we were able to complete more inspections per site. And that also takes into account that the Heights and the Gold Line, those inspections can take 5 hours. So, also like, taking into account the time spent on some of those larger sites. So we certainly don't dictate the rate of development in our district. But I think we were able to make more visits per site this year with additional inspectors. So.
That's what I kind of thought.
But yeah, there's certainly external things at play to have this much activity compared to the last handful of years, just in general in the construction world. So.
Well, and if there's more non-compliant, then you're going back to the site more often too, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of implied, that you're gonna have more as you.
Yeah, more enforcement. Yeah.
And a complimentary comment to say around the value of keeping high quality standards when you're doing inspection, plus having multiple people with that same quality is really paying off. I think it's a good thing. I have questions that will come up in the presentation that are related, but I did have one curiosity. I assumed that most violations start off as a verbal warning. So is that number just representing ones that stayed at a verbal warning and then fixed? Out of
So,
curiosity.
yeah, usually if it's sort of a normal kind of maintenance needed item, it'll appear on an inspection report as under review. A verbal warning is really if we're just driving by and not doing an inspection, and then we contact them and say like, hey, you need to sweep, or we got a complaint, and so maybe we don't have time to do a full
So
inspection.
it could come from the public, somebody saw something, or
Yeah.
you drive by, or.
Yeah.
I just think it's a good thing. You're holding high quality bars, and we're very we're very built out community. So I like.
Yeah, I think that contributed to the increase in the percent of non-compliant inspections partially. We obviously had a lot more rain this year, so that lended itself to some more violations, but also just kind of, being a little bit less accommodating and less flexible about things that are clearly violations, and really trying to hold people accountable. So I think there's sort of a twofold reason for that increase. But something we need
We
to
got quality
keep an eye on.
bars. You gotta stick to them. I got it.
Yeah.
May I just add a little comment, because there's a line item for the budget for the attorneys for enforcement action, and honestly, I think Nicole and her team have developed such a respect and have done such a good job about telling exactly what is expected of each contractor and so forth, that really, I think my line item for that budget has been 0 for a few years. I see why we keep it there, because if something does get litigious, it'll happen fast, but it's really kudos to Nicole and her team that really we're not getting called on from a legal perspective anymore to help with the enforcement. So really to be commended on that too, Nicole.
We might still use your name as a threat, though.
I can handle that. That's no worries.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's really due to Kendra and Mary just being, repetitive and staying on people. We are trying to avoid that escalation of enforcement by frankly being annoying enough. But it does take a lot of time to follow up and handhold and stuff like that. So I want to recognize that.
Who's gonna give the regulatory team maintenance program update? Is that you two, Mary, or
Yeah,
Nicole, or is it Mary?
We're kind of all gonna,
Pile on.
yeah. So we are all here in person.
I can.
This, yeah, we're gonna pull that up. But this discussion or sort of informal presentation was born out of discussion at our October meeting about questions about closed permit EMP inspection. We have questions about maintenance agreements and things of that nature. So just wanted to provide a little roadmap of where we are now, what barriers that we see for having inspections for closed permit BMPs in our district, but also where we hope to be headed. And if you have any input or ideas that you want us to pursue, we're all ears. So
Gonna try that again.
oh,
For the intro, Nicole. So I'll kind of start with where our program currently is at. So the closed permit program, or closed permit BMP, or permanent BMPs, we call it a lot of things, but it's basically any past permit that had a stormwater infrastructure, stormwater treatment BMP installed, that we go back and inspect year after the permit's been closed out and they met all permit requirements. So these BMPs go back to like the 90s. Right now we have 2022 permit BMPs in our system that we're going back to inspect year after year. So they can be like wet ponds, rain gardens, filtration basins, underground systems, porous asphalt, porous pavers. There's a large variety of different types of BMPs that we're inspecting. So this is just kind of a screenshot from a GIS map we have, just showing kind of like variability of the different BMPs from different year ranges. So I just put together some comparison numbers. We kind of want to interpret them, I think, in many different ways, but up until 2023, the permit team did help the stewardship grant team with their BMP inspection. So you'll see those numbers in the third one. And then the totals at the bottom, I'd say it's relatively stayed consistent, the amount of inspections, whether it's an active construction site, a closed permit BMP site, or stewardship grant site. The numbers have ranged in the mid 600s to 700s. And then just where the priority of time is put has kind of varied across active construction, closed permit BMPs, and the stewardship grant BMPs.
Can you help with who took over the stewardship grant BMP inspection?
Yeah, so in 2023, Simba's still here in 2023.
yeah.
And Emily Simmons were doing stewardship grant, and now it's Ashley. In the 2020 to 2022, Simba and I were doing them together, and it was kind of like a transition period where Simba was taking over and permit team was taking a step back. The odd high number in 2022, there was just some projects that I helped with that had like 60 rain gardens for one project. So like I did that one, and that took up a big portion of that 104 number. And then I want to point out the closed permit BMP in 2023 is high, and that's because our intern Nicole Peterson's only focus was closed permit BMP. She did not do active construction inspections, so that's why that number is high. As we just kind of talked about active construction, Kendra joined us this year and was trained in active construction for her internship, so that number is very high. And 2020 across the board was high because with COVID and a lot of things being put on pause, I would just come into the field and inspect all day long and got a lot done, I guess. So that's kind of where those numbers come from. I do want to take a second if anyone has questions with those.
Do you think, Mary, looking at the trend of having interns come in and support, is that still on plan for the summer?
Yeah,
Where'd you focus?
Yeah, with Kendra on board. So kind of the feedback we got from Nicole in 2023 was it got a little mundane doing closed permits all summer long with no variability in her duties. So that's why when Kendra came on board this past year, we had her do both. And now with Kendra full time, we're not looking to have an intern in 2025 just because we're still kind of onboarding and learning, having a team of 3. But we do want to have a seasonal position, we think, in 2026. And that kind of ties into with some of our goals for this closed permit BMP program.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to the next slide if there are any more questions on this one.
All right, so through our current closed permit BMP program, we have identified some barriers impede our ability to conduct large amounts of these closed permit inspections, as well as have effective communication
with entities and maintaining their own BMPs. So these are some of our barriers we've identified. Firstly, our permit team prioritizes active construction inspections over those closed permit inspections. And that's because active construction inspections require regular monitoring and enforcement to ensure that they're following permit requirements. They're also at a greater risk for immediate environmental impact due to earth moving activity or temporary BMPs that need repair or illicit discharge. Staff time constraints is another one of those barriers. The process of visiting a site, locating it, inspecting it, and sending out a maintenance report is time intensive. And especially with older BMPs, we've seen that some of these sites can be overgrown, full of noxious weeds, hard to locate in the field, and that can mean a lengthier maintenance report, which takes up more staff time. Again, with older BMPs, through my position, I've inspected BMPs installed between 2000 and 2009. So this is kind of the observations that I've seen, but a lot of the time, some of those contacts in the system may not be up to date. And so then you deal with things like undeliverable emails or out of service phone calls. And then that would require sending a letter to the site or visiting the site again to try and get an updated contact, which takes up time, staff time and resources. So then that communication breakdown, a barrier with regulatory agencies like us and entities maintaining their own facilities, running into those contacts not being updated, and then transition issues. We've seen also with sites that are changing hands in ownership, the old owner may neglect to inform the new owner of BMPs on their site. And so then there's lack of ongoing engagement with their BMPs, which result in those annual inspection reports not coming through or maintenance being neglected.
As you guys think about these barriers, have you considered the role that maybe images / drone footage might be applicable?
I haven't personally
Yeah.
considered drones for BMP inspection. I know having a drone is relatively new to our organization. There's only one person with a license currently. And, you know, I think that's gonna be a part of construction site inspections and BMP inspections in the future. I have not personally thought about how that could impact our program.
It's
Yeah.
perfectly reasonable. I was just kind of
Yeah.
curious because images have gotten so good now. I'm curious if there's more you can tell from just looking at an image as opposed to doing the rigorous foot on the ground. Out of curiosity.
Yeah, even we have a Mirror Man.
Yeah.
You know, maybe, which is a aerial photo service, but and they fly every
Twice a year.
twice a year. Yeah.
Twice a year.
So there is more. It's really up to date at least. So maybe there is something.
Yeah.
I feel like you'd only get the really bad sites like
Yeah,
that. There'd
right.
still be a lot of, I don't know, we gotta
The
go visit
details.
this.
Yeah.
I
We
really-
wouldn't be able to tell like an
I
structure.
always think of things in terms of priority sort, so you can down select to the percentage that you should focus on through something to this effect, and then maybe maximize time in those problematic areas. Not that you have to change, I'm not encouraging it, I'm just kind of curious how that could be used in the future.
Yeah, and we do have some ideas to address some of these barriers later in the presentation too, so we could always come back to this, but I think just like really introducing like the scope of what we're facing with over 2,000 of these facilities scattered throughout. And it's only gonna get higher.
The watershed has maintenance agreements. Has it ever been considered to have some type of self-reporting function as
There
a part?
is.
There is? So, okay.
That kind of brings us to our next slide.
I had a question on.
Yeah.
We'll get too far from that.
Mhm.
Can you say something about the reporting systems, communication breakdown there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
is that where you're?
What is our system like currently?
Well, just, kind of highlight what you mean there, and if you have any thoughts about, where we'd really like to be to improve those efficiency issues.
Yeah, I would say our current system is through our Access database, the BMPs are spatially located in ArcGIS, so we know the location in that regard. And we have a pre-populated checklist of common issues with the BMP that are tied specifically to that type of BMP. So a rain garden will populate a different list than like a tree trench. We'll go through and note like if there are inlets, outlets impaired, structural damage, vegetation management, so on and so forth, holding water. This information is all exported from the database in a PDF format and emailed or sent via mail to the landowner. From that point, we try to make the report as clear as possible that they can work off of the report, but if they have additional inquiries, they can ask for us to join them in the field to do a more in-depth assessment of their BMP. So I think our reports themselves are really clear. It's just a matter of getting it to the right hands. And then once it's in those hands, are they gonna do something about it? Yeah. Or if they have the money to do something about it, because some of these retrofits are very expensive and the letter kind of just comes to them out of the blue. Might be like a $50,000 repair work that they were not anticipating for their grounds.
And is that more specific with regard to the closed permit EMPs? Or is it, and less so the active construction type EMPs?
Expense wise.
And
Close, that would be to have to retrofit a whole pond.
Yeah.
You know, or something.
So if we went to a 2015 rain garden and was holding water and it hasn't rained in a week, we're gonna say, hey, like your stormwater infrastructure is failing at Walgreens, you need to fix this, and maybe that's dredging out the whole thing and basically rebuilding it, and that could be very expensive for them.
Yeah, we have more oversight during active construction while the permit's open, because we do final inspection before we would close a permit, return escrow to make sure it's like at a good place before the permit's closed, but.
so this reporting system barrier, is it really is more applicable to the closed permit at BMP maintenance?
Yeah, I would say our active construction reporting system is very effective for getting work completed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I tag on to what Mark is asking about? So on those projects that perhaps had an issue, like for a BMP, I think I've seen it in the past, but I can't recall clearly now. Do you have it marked down as to cause? And you know, similar to your permit top 5, is there a top 5 for the BMPs? And then perhaps the split might be, yeah, I'm not sure, but potentially cost for retrofit, or, you know, is it a commercial location or a residential location? Just kind of interesting, perhaps feedback or kind of this loop for the stewardship grant organization.
Yeah.
We've got a huge base of BMPs that have been installed, but I know that maintenance is always tough.
Yeah.
I mean, people say, "Oh, it's maintenance free."
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity to see how that money or how that investment has remained, has it remained healthy over the years, and if we're failing, then where is it failing? So I think I've seen it. I can't recall.
For the stewardship grant or for the permits?
For the BMP inspections that you're doing. I know we're not doing all of them, but of those that have failed, what are the top failure modes? And in your, I guess, estimation, the question would be, how many of these are require a total redo, a revamp?
Yeah, I would say it's not like a high number where that's like a total failure. They're gonna have to start from scratch. I would say it's more common that it's manageable maintenance, like removing accumulated sediment from pre-treatment devices. I think vegetation management is one we see very commonly, just like a lot of weed infestations at surface level BMPs. I guess the total failures, I'm not always aware of like what exactly it would take to cost. We kind of send them what we're seeing fail. It's totally up to them to get quotes, to hire contractors, to determine where that failure is coming from. maybe we see something going wrong, but we can't totally determine what's happening, but we're just kind of notifying them something doesn't seem quite right. But yeah, I would say the total failures aren't super common. Of the total failures we have seen, I mean, there have been efforts to repair them. Like I just had a senior living place in Woodbury where they paid like $50,000 to dredge out their basin. So it is plausible. It's just about timing, I think, and giving them the time to like find the money to do it, being reasonable with that.
And we have had a handful of permit BMPs where they get this inspection and maybe, because we don't require native vegetation originally, so maybe they want, you know, they have noxious weeds or whatever, so then they've gone through the stewardship grant program to kind of revitalize that and get some native plants in there.
That was kind of where I was gonna raise a question, is if they do find, especially if it's a BMP maybe that was transitioned and the new responsibility, new owners, management, whatever, may not have really had it in their scope of understanding or, you know, budgets. It's like, oh man, this is gonna be tough. Do we have any kind of experience with providing low interest loans or grants to them or some other funding mechanism? I mean, if we are going to continue doing, we're probably going to continue to see a lot of BMPs that are maybe not failing, but they're not working as intended. They need to be maintained. And I'm wondering, is that something we need to be thinking about looking to the future? Is that maybe another need for funding assistance?
It gets a little tricky with permits because it's their responsibility to have functioning BMPs based on our permit requirements. So there could be some, it just might not work the same as it would for other kinds of projects.
Yeah, they sign their permit, submit an O&M plan, sign an agreement saying, yep, you're gonna let us do this development, we're gonna do this. And so to then give them money for not doing that could be a slippery slope. And then if you give money to, you know, but I don't know if you wanna talk about the schools. I don't remember what that was.
I was gonna mention, I feel like there's kind of approached the stewardship grant program and the permit program in different ways. Stewardship grant, we're very much like trying to be lend a helping hand, have maintenance grants. This was voluntary, we'd love to help you out. Whereas permitting is, like Nicole said, you were required to install stormwater infrastructure because you wanted to build here. And so now you're obligated to take care of your grounds as you would any other type of infrastructure. And so there are instances though where people are developing where they don't have means to lots of resources, like schools. That huge referendum that happened, they expanded and now they have these basins, they're just way in over their heads. And so we did kind of try to start up a pilot program that we would help to cover the cost of like maintaining the vegetation in those permanent basins at schools if they'd be willing to share the 50-50 responsibility. We have had some hard troubles getting that started up though, because they still aren't able to afford their 50%. So we're still trying to work out that pilot program.
Yeah, I certainly recognize that in a regulatory context, you know, it's their obligation. That said, especially as we get older type projects and, you know, there's land transfers and that, even though it is supposed to be recorded on the deed, they should be aware of it. But I can only, you know, guess that there's a lot of, oh, really? Never realized. And so I'm just trying to get a sort of a sense of where we might be in that conversation. And maybe shouldn't, I'm not promoting.
Thought about it quite a lot. And like I think we even gave like Paige was saying, enhanced vegetation grants that are maybe easier to maintain because we've had some, usually like residential developers will come in and sign all the permits and the agreements and all that, and they're like, yep, great, and then they're gone. And then it's the homeowners or an HOA, townhome association, that's then left with a filtration basin with prairie seed plantings that they can't feasibly maintain. So we've provided more assistance to cases like that. And helped with, I think that Roseville one was coming to mind, providing funding for maybe plugs or an easier planting plan that's more manageable. Because, you know, these folks just moved in and, you know, the developer was like, oh yeah, this is yours. And then they're gone, or the builder, you know, they're gone. So we have looked at things in different lights, depending on, but probably like your average commercial site, like, you know, like Menards or something, it's like, we're not gonna give probably funding to something like that, but
We probably,
Yeah.
so it sounds like you guys are developing some sort of trial so we can inform a policy or plan
Yeah.
change, because it seems like we would have to be very definitive in what
Yeah.
we can and cannot give if we do anything in that way.
I would say too that we recognize one of our constraints is not being able to get to all these sites every year. Like that would be amazing if we could, but one of our goals is to more consistently reach out to permits that have closed in the past couple of years as reminders, so they don't forget about it. And then 10 years down the road, they're like, what BMP? Like they're kind of more in the know because they've been reminded annually.
I think that's key, is that we're prioritizing the more recent ones, because we, like you said, we have 30, 40-year-old BMPs. Some of them maybe even reach like a useful life kind of designation. So I mean, that fact that you are following up with the newer ones, I think is helpful.
We also offer to public entities or cities and the counties, they can join into our annual maintenance program. So we can, you know, use our contractors to do maintenance, and then we would just invoice that cost back to the, you know, city or county. I think currently we have a handful of those, but like Roseville, like a lot of their BMPs aren't in our district, so they have created their own program based on ours, which is neat to see. That's available to them.
Speaking on that topic, do y'all mind helping me understand the role that a city or a governing body like that plays in terms of helping this cause?
yeah, well, you know, most cities and counties are regulated MS4s. So per those requirements of the state, there are certain inspection requirements, but those are usually limited to their own infrastructure that they own. So
So like a school per se wouldn't fall within
Yeah.
their jurisdiction.
yeah, we do have some joint maintenance agreements with a couple of our cities, Maplewood and Roseville. We also know of, you know, Woodbury and I don't know what other, I mean, they have their own maintenance agreements, so sometimes they're separate, or like St. Paul. But I think they run into the same issue with staff time and resources to be able to inspect BMPs that are particularly on private land. I think Maplewood tries to do some, but I think it's the same kind of problem.
Sounds like we're talking about your proposed plans on the next slides. that
Yeah.
you-
Yes, so you have some exciting plans we'll get to.
Yeah.
We'll talk briefly, kind of like what Ben brought up with the maintenance agreements. We can kind of explain that information.
Yeah, so the maintenance agreements that we have in place are required for all private developments. Like I said, we have some joint agreements that are, you know, involve three signatories, the developer, the city, and the watershed. Other times in other cities, they'll have the separate agreement with the developer, but we require this maintenance agreement in some way, shape, or form for all private developments. The gist of the maintenance agreement is we recognize that we're installing this infrastructure. We know that we're responsible for maintaining it so that it's functional. It also gives access to our staff to come in on their properties and inspect that infrastructure. It also says that we can essentially hire out the work ourselves and bill them back. I don't know how that works, so we've never done it. But that is available to us. It also states that the applicant shall submit an annual report on their BMP to our staff, but it's very few and far between. And that's another thing that we'll talk about for our future plans, but that's what the maintenance agreement basically says. And then in the last couple of years, we've gotten a little more detailed with our operations and maintenance plan requirements. So I just have a screenshot. It's pretty hard to tell what that says, but we require this during the permit review process so that it's developed by the engineer that's actually designing the facilities. So they can, essentially this document is a site-specific document, the audience of which is the owner or any site maintenance personnel that they may have. And then also for us to come in and inspect. So we're reading about these facilities, how they function, what inspection things we should be looking at, what maintenance is required at what frequency. This also has local maintenance contractors, this example provided from a development. So we're asking engineers to say, can you list some companies that do this work? So this document is really supposed to be handed off to the owner, and we check at permit closeout that that's been given to the owner and that we have it on file. So that's been a little more recent. We have templates on our website about what to include in O&M plans. And we also have an example one as well. So that's been very useful, I think, for our staff, especially when we're doing inspections. And then when the owner says, oh, we didn't know about this BMP, what are you talking about? If they've lost their O&M plan, we're like, here, this is for you. So we require that before a permit will be issued. And then we require a signed and notarized maintenance agreement. The intent of that agreement is that it's recorded against the property. But what we've discussed is requiring proof of that recording potentially, and at what part of the permit process is it best to do that? Prior to permit issuance, prior to permit closeout. There's some pros and cons to both of those. But that's something that we could do, is get this proof of recording on file for each permit. And then, like I mentioned, we have a lot of resources available. So if you wanted to look at any O&M plan or maintenance agreement stuff that's on our website, we could do that, or we could move to the next slide.
Can you talk a little bit about kind of that side note, perhaps requiring that proof of recording?
Yeah.
So what would that do for you? What additional security would that give you that you don't have now?
So that's kind of part of the question. We don't have a long and storied history of enforcing these agreements to the point where we would need to enforce it as it's recorded. We usually just tell people, hey, this is maintenance agreement exists. And then they say, okay. So we haven't gotten to the point where proof of whether or not the document's been recorded has not allowed us to get what we want from dealing with homeowners, but that is the intent of the agreement. There's some administrative difficulties, I guess, if you require proof of recording before the permit's issued. Usually people are panicking to get their permit issued. And so to get proof of recording, we usually say, okay, like we need the agreement signed and notarized, and then we'll release the permit. Meanwhile, we'll sign and notarize and then give it back to you. So if we had to do all that on the front end, it would probably stress a lot of people out, but maybe that's fine. If we require proof of recording before the permit's closed, sometimes the developer has already sold the property, so they can't themselves record it. And so then it's on whoever owns it now. And what if they're like, we don't want to do it. We don't want to record
Yeah,
it.
they're not the permit either.
I can also tell you that I deal a lot with property at a county level. Ramsey County is 60 to 90 days to record.
Yeah.
And so, it's spring, you want to get a project going, you may not get confirmation from Ramsey County until October.
When did you initiate the O&M plans? I apologize, I didn't call a date.
Probably 2022. You remember 23?
And do you know how many of permits have closed with said plans under the new process?
Probably 50. I had to guess. but-
Yeah, I don't really know how many, but that is in our permit closeout checklist
Yeah.
is provide proof that owner has received the site-specific O&M plan. And we also have a line item in the permit closeout list that the O&M plan has to be updated with the as-built information of the system.
This might be a slow roll opinion. I had a similar question to Stephanie, but I was going to build on what she had asked, given she gave me a thought. Do we have enough data to know that the O&M plans and the way that we're doing it have been effective in what we've done to date? And so if it has been shown to be effective, that's when we should start talking, in my opinion, around requiring certain things. I think if you had kicked them off in 2022, let's say it is 50, we might need a little bit more time to see how effective they've become, would be my 2 cents. And tell me if I'm off base, but I think if you need to show return on investment in requiring an activity, is my opinion. And so if we're showing that this has helped, then you can really help the lane owner say, well, we require this, and this is shown it saved you a lot of money in the past, like in the future. That becomes an easier discussion than we're going to require it at one point or the other. So it's just kind of my thought on this.
And that's for the O&M plans, but the
Yeah.
recording is for the maintenance agreements, and those we've been doing for
Okay.
25 years or so, something. So we've had maintenance agreements.
Yeah.
We just haven't had,
This plan.
the O&M plans are a little
Well,
different, yeah.
the way I
More
internalized
detail.
it was that this extra detail is meant to assist with them in ushering in the right appropriate action with their BMP.
Yeah, the O&M plans are extremely helpful for, the owners and us to have a plan in place for what's supposed to. But the recording is, I think, a little different,
Okay. I
not
get it.
related to the O&M plans, but
So-
to the maintenance.
Well, I see them kind of shared, but I totally
Yeah.
get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm just trying, we've given a helpful tool that we're hoping is going to benefit in terms of maintenance. Have we shown that this tool has been effective in that particular way to do things differently?
I think Tracy wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to weigh in that, the reason we record any document is so we can put the public on notice of the ownership, right? A deed or an easement if we have a right to go over the property. So I think it's really important to record a document if in the future a new owner is going to be obligated. So that's why we do that with the maintenance agreements. So the homeowners, even if the builder has bought out and the homeowners association is now owned by all the homeowners instead of the builder, they should be put on notice, just like their declarations and covenants. So recording, it's really important. It's just a question of if you really need to put them under the gun before the permit is issued. And if they don't follow up and sign one, what do we do? But if we're going to want to look at a future owner or people down the road doing and maintaining these pursuant to the terms of the agreement, we do need to record it. It's just putting the future public on notice of the obligation.
Hey, Tracy, can I ask a question on that though? Because
Sure.
it sounds like they have to do the maintenance plan. Right, what governs the need to do it? And what's the value of us adding additional proof for that
Well,
particular step?
Right. Well, I mean, I think staff will have to show the science behind it, but if we require somebody to put something in as part of their project and to make it work the way it was designed, it needs to be maintained. I mean, I think that's the benefit of ownership. I mean, if we're going to own something, right, we change our furnace filters. It's just to put them on notice, hey, to continue to have this work the way it needs to work. And that's why we required it as part of our permit. You have to build this into your budget. You should know about it. And we're here to help. We're a resource to help you, but that's going to be part of your cost so that it all functions properly as the whole site was designed when it was first put in place.
And forgive the continuous questions, what I'm trying to get my hands around is what does this replace or fill? What gap does this fill? And that's where I'm struggling. honestly,
I struggled with it myself because of having not been. And historically, none of us have been very diligent about requiring this proof of recording because truthfully, it doesn't come up very often, or we don't get challenged on it. But I think what Tracy's saying is that that's the intent of the agreement and it should be done. But administratively, it's tricky to figure out where in the permit process to really go after that. And it'll just take more time for me to do it, which is fine. But that's been sort of the reason for not, I mean, we haven't.
Yeah, I think, I mean, one of the things to remember here is that this is a issue, you know, we're trying to figure out the things, but we don't really have a major, you know, when we
Yeah.
look at our inspections, we see a pretty high percentage of functioning BMPs. We haven't had any egregious, like really non-compliant, really important issue. But if we did have to go to a landowner and require them, or we said we're gonna come in and do something because it's that egregious and we don't have that agreement recorded, then.
so it helps us in the end cases where there is a large failure of a BMP. Is it fair to summarize it?
Or even access, I mean, like, they're saying, you know, it gives us the ability to access site, well, we might have some landowners that would, you know, prohibit us from accessing the site if we didn't have that.
Experience of that.
We haven't, but
Yeah.
it could happen,
Mhm.
yeah.
But respectfully, the landowner hasn't, if a property owner agrees with the district and, or not agrees, the permit requires, and they're under an obligation to maintain for a period of time. And in the interim, 10 years down the line, the property owner sells to a new property owner, it's not recorded. It doesn't relieve them of their legal responsibility to us. They can now sue the prior property owner, but we can still go on the property, we can still do work and build them. All of those mechanisms still exist for us. It just requires us to be much meaner than saying, well, you should have known. So you know, in a way, Tina, I'm actually agreeing with you. I think we're solving a problem that doesn't need to be solved. We have all the legal remedies to do anything to a property owner who uses public money, whether they record the deed or not. Unless I'm reading this wrong. I'm taking a macro slice of this,
Yeah.
which is well, whether recorded or not, we have a legal agreement.
Well, I'm curious to see what Tracy thinks, but a lot of times our agreements are not with the property owner, right? So we might have an agreement with the developer. And
Right.
But
they're not,
again,
the permittee is not the owner of the property and.
complete agreement. I
Yeah.
mean, the property changes ownership all the
Right,
time, but
right.
that's what title insurance is for. And I have bought property and been subject to, I won't go into gruesome details, but to variances the previous property owners granted and never recorded, and I've sued them. And said, this is, you cheated me, I'm gonna get my money out of you.
Well, I mean, that's the issue, right? You had to go through that. Our privity of contract is going to be with the person that sought the permit, that wanted to do the work on the land. And we say, hey, if you're going to do this, here are the things that's in the public's best interest. So we're going to require you to do that. Having it recorded, now all future owners will know that obligation. They won't need to sue. They won't need to find out. I mean, the whole idea is to say, if we think this is important enough to require this for the good of the whole, all of the public, that this BMP or this project be maintained this way, then I just think it's prudent as a district that a homeowner doesn't fall into what you experience, that they actually see the document has been recorded. This is going to be an obligation. They might want to investigate it before they buy the property and understand what's going to be expected of them. But this way it's known by every person who owns that property going forward, because it's been made public, you know, when they've been put on notice because it's been recorded against that parcel. So
is it not public now, Tracy, in terms of the fact that there is a maintenance?
If they don't record it, the only two people who know are this entity and the original property owner.
right. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole idea.
That document that the original property owner has isn't in the public space?
No, that's what we're talking about. Proof of recording would mean that when you bought your house or you bought this piece of property, your title examiner would say, oh, here's a lien essentially against the property for perpetual maintenance of something.
Okay. you for clarifying. In my mind, I thought we were trying to record it for our own personal records. No, this is actually in the public space. Thank you. Understand.
Counties record land, so counties would be the depository.
Thank you.
Yep.
Part of each deed.
And more than you ever want to know, but we are a title insurance company at my firm. And frankly, if there is unrecorded agreements like this, we won't insure that. So your boilerplate language on your title insurance is that this excludes your B1 exclusions say, you know, if it's not of record, we can't know about it either. So again, just because we were good stewards of the public's money, if we say, yes, we'll allow you to make this change and we'll grant you this permit to do this to this land, but going forward, to make this all work well for the public's best interest, we're going to want this maintained. If we've determined that's important enough, Val, kind of your question, then really we should record it and make sure everyone going forward knows that this is what needs to be done to keep everything going well. And the question is just really, when are we going to get compliance by the owner before they get their permit or before you close out the permit? And I think it's more the timing and actually proof of recording. You know, we can do a title search and we can see it. That's the whole goal of recording, right? So it'll be public. It's nice of them to provide us with a copy with the recording information, but we can always check it afterward to make sure it's been done.
Yeah, I think just based on my experience and what you were saying, Matt, requiring it before a permit's issued is gonna be very challenging and will stress me out a lot. But you know, maybe just setting reminders for myself to keep checking in, you know, a month after the permit's issued or, you know, while we're still, and just remind them that, you know, we're not gonna return the escrow, which still usually goes back to that original developer until it's recorded. There's only been one developer that has pushed back on that because he's like, oh, I already sold it, I'm not doing that. So maybe it's just more reminders.
So I read this a couple of times, what's up on the screen, and for my own mind, my own sanity, I want to clarify that required of all privately owned BMPs. So this is true regardless of scale. This is true of multifamily, you know, developer type. This is true of single family private residential or commercial, that we are now requiring maintenance agreements and essentially also deed recording.
I will say with the caveat that most single family projects don't trigger a permit, so it'd have to be a development or subdivision where it's a shared maintenance responsibility, typically with like a HOA or something like that. But yeah.
So it's probably at least over the 1 acre threshold.
Yeah, it definitely
It
is.
has to be.
Yeah,
Perfect.
because we don't require these BMPs if they're under an acre.
What are the precedents has been set in requiring permits and maintenance in other areas?
We just spoke to Cap Region staff. They require proof of recording before the permit's issued, which again, I was like, no. I think that's all though I know about
Did
that.
they have any, what did they say about the timing of that? If there's been any issues or?
I think their whole process is a little bit different and maybe they just don't get stressed by the pressure like I do. She didn't really.
No.
She's just like, yeah, this is.
I mean, at the end, it's up to the developer to read through the rules. If they need to build in an extra 60 days, they need to be aware of that. And so it's more of a teaching, hey, we're doing this. You need to budget this time for your project. I mean, those first year or two. No, I know, like the first year or two is going to be extremely difficult because they're going to be like, well, this adds to my timeline. But I mean, to me, at the end, it's kind of necessary. If it's not happening, you have no, if someone says, no, I don't, you know, it's not recorded, we don't really have the authority that we're seeking through these.
I think it's very common for metro area watersheds to require the maintenance agreements for sure, and then to have recording requirements. I'm not sure about, you know, enforcement of the proof of recording, but I know it's very common for years. It's been,
Does this require board action at some point in the future?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
Just curious.
Be more just administrative on my end.
Yeah, we already record, like I said, we.
And the intent was always that they were being recorded, but whether or
Yeah,
not
we do
we
record
have
it,
that proof on file, that's been lacking, so.
And I'm wondering if the board would mind or would be okay with, my talking with Tina and Nicole, and perhaps we get a document that's in recordable form that they sign when they come to pick up their permit. And then we talk about how that actually gets recorded. I mean, perhaps we can work out a process that we could at least bring to the board and see if there's a reaction with that.
Yeah, I
'Cause
think our current template, I mean, we have gotten proof of recording for what our current template is, but yeah, it's probably worth looking at again. Just to make sure there's no missing pieces or things that would prompt applicants to have to come back or have it rejected by the county for whatever reason, but that hasn't happened with our current template. But it might just be helpful to me too to understand what that process looks like, because I get questions about it all the time. They say, well, are you recording the document? And I say, no, it's your responsibility. They have to wait for our signature and notary before they can do that. But that's the other thing. If we don't sign and notarize right away, then we're holding up the so that's tricky about getting it before the permit's issued too. But yeah, I think that would be helpful.
I mean, process wise, can the district file that, or does the landowner have to file it? Like, could you collect signatures and be the last notary and then you submit to the county to put it on the deed?
I don't think we can if we don't own the property, and it probably costs money, right?
Well, we really can. That's why I'd like to maybe talk to you, because we record these documents from our desk every single day. So
Then you could
all the
require that
recording
fee.
is just remote. And maybe we can build in a fee. We don't necessarily, have to charge, but maybe we could work out a process that we actually do the recording. And honestly, like, we don't go physically to any courthouse anymore. It's all just recorded right electronically.
The other thing too, with the joint agreements where there's a city signatory, sometimes I don't get that back for like 6 months or never.
That's true.
Where it's like the developer signs, the watershed signs, it goes to the city and disappears. So, I mean, we have to get it before the permit's closed, but usually it's been sitting there for months and months. So that's what's also difficult about those joint agreements. But yeah, that's something we could talk about. Those joint agreements probably should be updated too.
So as I focus on outcomes, going back to it, it seems like if you can do it in a way that doesn't slow down the permitting process and progress that we seek, that's low burden to y'all and the property owner and can transfer, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
More about burden, time, and what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a way to streamline it for our staff, but also not let that be holding up the permit for them to actually break ground.
Yeah, especially if we explore recording it ourselves, so that really would take that
I mean,
barrier away.
it doesn't sound like that needs to be. Please, Tracy, work with the staff, obviously, but
Yeah.
I will go back to, it feels like a remedy for a problem that we haven't encountered.
That's true too.
And we have check marks in the permitting process that says you need them. So there are things there, but if this helps, it doesn't add too much burden to you and the property owner. It's y'all's prerogative to figure out.
Yeah, but I think the O&M plans, separate from the legal agreements, have been great, and were directly born out of problems we were seeing during inspection and associated follow-up with property owners, where we say, oh, you have an underground system under your parking lot that you need to maintain, and we can't show them a great utility plan to show them where we need to inspect, and where also they need to, vacuum out sediment, for instance. So having these O&M plans with accompanying figures that specifically show, like, this is where you look, this is where you back out stuff. This is how often you should be looking at this. This is an example of a company that does this. So I think these are really helpful addition more recent addition.
I see them linked in my head still, so I'd love.
They
to
are
see where
very,
go.
like, one's like almost like an addendum of another,
It's kind of,
or vice versa, yeah.
this has been one amazing education, so thank you for that.
Continue, okay. So, we did want to, you know, obviously preface with the barriers we're experiencing and kind of where the program is at now. We do feel like we always can do more, but we also want to recognize that Ramsey-Washington is very much a leader in closed permit BMP inspections in the metro area and across watershed districts. I gave a presentation at the Water Resource Conference in 2023 about our BMP maintenance program, and largely the feedback I received was that people really want to start doing this programming. Across the board, that people don't even do this yet. From that presentation, I was asked to speak at the Carver County Watershed Management Organization Stormwater Workshop, which had design engineers, contractors, and municipal employees from across the West Metro. Again, the feedback I kind of got after my presentation was, wow, we don't do this, or you guys do this way more robustly than we do. Same with the active construction. I'm now going to be a U of M Erosion Stormwater Management Program instructor. So again, I think we're kind of paving the way in active construction inspections as well. And across metro regulator discussions, it just sounds like people are asking us all the time, what do you do? How do you do this? How do you get to all those sites? So we want to recognize that our program is pretty far along compared to other watershed districts in the area and other municipalities.
So now looking to the future, Mary, Nicole and I met and we discussed some of these barriers and what could be done to try and fix that and make a even more robust closed permit BMP system. So we intend to enforce above ground BMPs on a 3 to 5 year basis and below ground BMPs on a 5 to 7 year basis. We've also been working towards improving the accountability of owners and maintaining their own BMPs. As we just discussed, our maintenance agreements hold owners accountable for annually inspecting their own BMPs. But to make this a more responsible system, we are implementing email blast report reminders. We plan on piloting this for our 2022 to 2024 closed permit contacts, focusing on those newer builds. We are also exploring a new submittal option for these annual inspection reports directly through our website. We intend to strengthen our coordination with city contacts and the BMPs that they maintain through reaching out to all the cities in our district and having a conversation about how they want inspections submitted to them, how they can best update us on their maintenance efforts, and who would be the best contact moving forward. And then we want to look into ways to improve the efficiency of our enforcement inspections, thinking about a prioritization tool. We want to explore variables that would allow us to focus on the most pressing closed permit BMPs first. And we would need to discuss what variables we were looking at for the future. And we believe these updates to our program will create a more robust system that makes our work run more efficiently, as well as holds entities more accountable.
The enforcement frequency, I have no idea the relative number of the above ground versus the below ground. My gut tells me there are more above ground, but
For now.
yeah, good point. I'm just wondering if there might not be value in reconsidering that at the below ground. There are potentially fewer of them. They're out of sight and out of mind for most people. And would it make more sense to have them more frequently visited for that reason? I don't know, just throw that out.
Yeah, we could certainly look at that. I think part of that's just we have inspected all of the below ground closed permit BMPs in our district, just finding that most were functioning. And then I don't know if this was part of the calculation, but for below ground BMPs, we do that with engineering assistance. So it is different matter of scheduling, coordination and budget, frankly, because we go out with someone from BAR for below ground BMPs, most of the time, I would say, but,
I think they
that was.
generally probably take longer to fail or have
Yeah.
problems too, you know? So if you inspect them 1 year and it's functioning, you know, you could have a little more time before you would see any problems because of nature.
All good points.
Yeah, so to summarize, it's based off of y'all's experience and intervals in which maintenance is required, plus the return on investment for the dollars that we have to spend to do it.
Yeah, the timeframes, the 3 to 5 and 5 to 7 were kind of guesstimates on what's achievable. Undergrounds, like Nicole said, take more time because we set up days with BAR to go to do them. We also have to think about too, like we do those underground inspections for clothing permits with BAR as well. So those typically take up the time with them, and then we get to the maintenance ones that we can. And we've just found, like Nicole also said, we've inspected them all already, whether it's a closeout or a maintenance inspection, and they just accumulate sediment pretty slowly. Typically, they're contributing drainage areas, are clean pavement or vegetation. So we just find that they don't need frequent maintenance. So we aren't gonna inspect them as frequently, but we are still gonna do the email blasts to hold them accountable and remind them of these systems. Yeah.
And is that email blast likely to be the full universe, or is it like the last 3 years, 5 years?
Yeah, we're trying to decide. We don't want to do it all at once, so our inboxes get like inundated. So we'll probably do batches at a time. We're still kind of working out how exactly those batches would work. I'll probably do some, Kendra will probably do some. And we're hoping we'd get that website link up and running before we send those out, so we can just say, hey, submit here, and make it really easy and not confuse them by saying consent to me, but eventually we'll have this website link sort of thing. Yeah.
But starting with the 2022 to 24 sites.
Yeah, trying to catch them where they just closed their permit maybe within the last
And
year
then
or
work
so. And
Yeah.
work backwards from there, seeing how it goes, yeah.
Before we leave the permit programming, I just see that I had a note that I didn't bring up earlier. It's not necessarily related to the closed permit BMPs. Earlier, Nicole, you had presented some of the statistics, you know, you show us those statistics monthly, that are, you know, these are the type of violations that we're typically seeing, and that they typically are having a similar pattern. And I'm just wondering if we shouldn't make more use of that. Like when somebody comes in for permits, or when you're going out to do initial contacts for inspections, that gets communicated. Hey, these are the things we almost always have problems with. Make sure you're really trying to keep on top of them. I don't know.
I think we do that right in our.
Yeah, we
initial
do
pre-cons.
initial walkthroughs for every project, and communicate what we're looking for. But I guess we don't say this is the top 5. I can say the top 5 is generally those items where maintenance is frequent. You know, perimeter control, it's like you have to do maintenance once it's half full. So that happens a lot quicker than some of the other violations that might be less frequent. But certainly, I mean, with the increase in the violations for the sites not self-inspecting as required is something we could bring up and just say like, hey, we've noticed this trend. So make sure, I mean, we do say that anyway. You know, we always ask where your reports are gonna be. And
That is one thing we implemented, I'd say a few years ago. We would never check their inspection logs. It just takes extra time. I should say never, but we'd rarely check them because it just takes that much more time to find someone, to unlock the office, to let you in and look at their inspection log. But we noticed that people weren't doing them. So now at initial walkthroughs, we ask where the log's kept, who's maintaining it, what's their certification. And then Kendra and I check them much more frequently than we used to. Pretty much almost every visit we check for them. If we have no way to check for it, no one's on site, we require them to email it to us when we send out our report. So we are definitely like trying to get at those. And that's why you see a lot of non-compliance, because we'll ding them right away if they miss them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome job, guys. This is really good. Thank you for preparing all the questions. Looking forward, Stooge grant program.
Yeah, so we, in no applications this month, but we reset our budget, so we're back to the.
A lot of zeros, so.
Conservation districts are back to designing, Ashley is still getting quite a few maintenance grant requests from the end of last year, so this number will probably change, because she'll have a bunch that will be closed out, but that's where it is now.
Very cool. So, any questions? It's off scot-free without questions. There are no action items, so we go to Tracy, attorney report.
Hey, you guys, Happy New Year, everyone. This month, we actually looked at the Fitzgerald project documents after they were awarded the CIP bid, and we made sure that those were all approved and in order so they could begin working. We worked on some memorandum of understanding, talking about working with cities like Little Canada, Shoreview, Maplewood, just to help them with their pond clean out. And recently I just received the access agreement for Bailey's to have access through their property for the Fish Creek project. And it looks like we're going to start recording the Fish Creek easements. I think they're all signed up and going to be delivered to my office this week. And again, we'll record them as we can do again without having to actually physically go to the courthouse. So it's been a nice month.
Any questions for Tracy? Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Jumping forward to board discussion topics, there are two pieces that I just want to call attention to, one, and then ensure that we talk about the legislative event just briefly. So I know Stephanie had submitted comments about the watershed conference. Thank you so much for the notes that you submitted there. I have mine brought with me, and I'm going to end up typing them up. So I do want to just ask, Ben and Mark, if you have a couple, just write your outcomes and ensure that Tina receives them, so we can just compile them as we look forward to the watershed plan. The second topic I just want to cover, that legislative event. I believe it's the 19th and 20th. I believe. I'd like to go, and it'd be wonderful if others were interested. I think that what came up last time is it'd be good to really finalize those talk points. Now we have another board meeting in February before that happens. So what I would propose to do, and if you guys would permit, I'd like to work or talk with Tina about what those talk points are, and then we can solidify who is going, whoever is going or interested in going knows what to say to the legislators. I believe you have to register, I think it's by the 27th, so it's going to be, you have to register before the next board meeting, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, so we just got that information today in your email. I think you all maybe should have received that. So I'll have Emily get in touch with everybody and see who wants to be registered for the event. So the legislative event that you're registering for is the afternoon into the evening of the 19th. And then the 20th, you're kind of on your own to make appointments and meet with legislative members. So that's, I think, for the packet next month, I'll have, we'll talk about the talking points, and we'll also have some contact information for the different legislative members that are in our district, or maybe your representatives as well. It's going to be a little tricky this year if you follow the legislative situation. So from what I'm hearing, this first month is kind of chaos right now. So it'll be interesting to see if we can get those meetings scheduled and get that figured out, but we'll be prepared for it.
What I do like, and obviously if we can't get them, that's we tried, and that's wonderful. But it's a good opportunity, as said in the Watershed Conference, to take the time to educate them and be an active partner to try to help them along, because any leg up we can give them in understanding these fairly complex pieces, I think will be helpful. So just wanted to bring it up just to make sure that awareness, and if it'd be great if there's more than one who goes. I would like to go, and like I said, so we can figure that out as we proceed.
I'm also interested in attending, and a question is especially for the day of the 20th, where it's open to meeting with the legislators, would it be something that the watershed would consider sharing kind of the speaking points to kind of the larger group? So CAC members who might be interested in going, engaging Minnesota water stewards. So we've got perhaps a larger group interested in very much promoting the same things.
Yeah, I think we can talk about that and how we want to
Publishing.
focus and on our
Yeah, and exactly, to
Context.
have the same kind
Yeah.
of, at least speaking.
That's a good suggestion. Make that kind of
Yeah, I
ideas.
think, those speaking points will be kind of twofold, right? So we'll have our kind of overview, who we are and what we do and how we're related to Minnesota watershed, Minnesota watersheds. And then also, we want to hit on the top 2 priorities for Minnesota watersheds as well, which is the chloride issue and the limited liability and the coordination with DNR are the 2 that we're determined to be the 2.
So just kind of maybe diving too deep on this, but for the chloride issue, I thought that the guidance was that they didn't want to really push on the limited liability anymore. Saw that as a kind of a dead issue or a dead.
I think that's changing.
Isn't it? Okay.
I think there's hope is what I'm hearing. So
Okay.
I think we'll be getting more guidance from Minnesota watersheds as well. So as we lead up to the event, we'll be getting communications from the lobbyists and from Jan regarding that and how they're feeling about, again, I know they're kind of waiting for the chaos to kind of settle down a little bit before they really dive in. But what I heard today from Jan in a meeting was that there was some hope that it was gonna have some movement to them.
That's great. And I just make sure it's drawing attention to it. This is a good opportunity for us, especially given the leadership that we have in multiple different areas.
Mm.
So, thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Moving to new reports and presentations. This one really is a for information, if I recall correctly, but that's why you were here.
Yes.
If you want an update, I can run through it quick for you.
Overview it, I guess.
The overview.
I mean, yeah, we understand what it's for. I have a question, but
Sure.
that's about it.
Just dive into the
Yeah.
questions.
Let's do that. So one of the points that I recall from the watershed conference highlighted a district's push to get all of the different stormwater piping, et cetera, into their model. And I know your bar has done a lot of work in that. As you think through, as you incorporate these new areas, are there other key areas that you would like to also prioritize, or are these the 3 that you absolutely think we have to go to?
Yeah, so these 3 areas we're kind of leveraging a bit of a unique opportunity with 2 of them, the Lake Phelan area and the Dayton's Bluff area. Stormwater systems, as we learned through the permitting program, they're dynamic
They're
systems,
all over,
they change. And the city of St. Paul is one community within our district that develops their own stormwater models to a little bit more detailed scale than what we would typically need to manage intercommunity flows and water bodies that we manage too. But the methodology that the city uses is generally consistent with the methodology that we use to develop our stormwater models. So if the detailed information is available and we can bring it in and maintain some consistency between our watershed scale model and what they use to manage their municipal system, we'd like to do that.
That would be very helpful.
So that's where that's the Lake Phelan area. That one, the city of St. Paul is developing that right now, the beginning of 2025. Their tentative schedule is to be done with that in the summer of 2025. And that's when they would share it back with us. And we would start this process. The Dayton's Bluff area, the city already has the model done. They've indicated that they're willing to share it with us, but in order to streamline the process, we would just do the updates all at once. The Highway 36 area, you can see it's within our jurisdictional boundary, but it's outside the hydrologic boundary. That's a small landlocked area in the watershed. And so during really wet years, there's discussions between the county and MnDOT on when they can pump that water to keep the county, I forget which county road it is, dry, and they pump it into the MnDOT system and it drains into Jarvis Lake. And so
while we don't have a project there, having that part of our model we'd be able to better inform those discussions on when pumping could occur, how much, and so forth. And so that would be, as long as we're going into the model, we take this opportunity to add that small piece in at this time too.
Yeah, I'm just a big fan of supporting, I think Mark and I had a really detailed conversation at the watershed district around data. It's really important as we look forward into the future. So I think this makes a lot of sense. I was just kind of curious. This was an opportunity or something where like you needed to shore it up, or are there other areas you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, this is really an opportunity. It's taking advantage of work that's already done. I mean, we want to make sure the model is representative of existing conditions, but we also don't want to get carried away with adding detail for the sake of adding detail. And so this is a good balance where we've got a partner, we can leverage work that's already done, and we can see an improvement model.
Very cool.
Question on task one. Which is the sub-watershed delineations.
Sure.
I'm just trying to get a sort of a mental handle on particularly what scale that's done at, and is it a consistent, where you mentioned that the two areas of St. Paul that it's already worked on, is that sub-watershed scale essentially the same in both those areas? I mean,
Yeah. So the city typically develops their stormwater models to an intersection scale. We call them catch basin cluster, so a group of catch basin inlets. Whereas if we were looking at maybe somewhere else in the watershed, a lot of our watersheds are developed more to a regional pond level, lake level, or more of a major wetland level, topographic depression level, so a little bit larger scale. And that typically gives us enough resolution for what we need in order to manage. But incorporating that additional detail into the model, we do have parts of our model that go to that level of detail. And so if it's already available, if it's developed consistent with our standards we use everywhere else, it's easy for us to pull in. But we would, because we don't necessarily manage intersection level flooding, it's not something that we would just go and do on our own if it wasn't already available. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Great job, updated. Well, heading to administrative report.
Yeah, there's not a lot in here. As Matt said, it was the holidays.
No, back to the major.
We had my meetings attended, and then I have the upcoming meetings and dates, just some notes on there. I have the Metro Watershed. That's an online meeting, and you'll receive an email week or so with the invite for that. So if you can hop on, that'd be great. And then have some other CAC meetings and legislative event details in there as well. So 1 anniversary for the staff this month. The board action log is not attached, but it looks the same as it did last month. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. And then just the Minnesota watershed. And prepare to go to Roseau for the summer tour if you're.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, something like 7 hours north.
Were you Googling it?
No, I've driven that many times.
Oh, you've driven that
It
many
almost makes more sense to go to North Dakota.
Yeah.
Any questions for Tina? Awesome. Jumping to the project and program status reports. As typical, I'll just announce my first question is it's on E. Any questions before E? So as I look through this stakeholder engagement one, it's something that's come up a couple of times in conversations and prior. This is for the watershed management plan updates. I liked the overall plan. As I look at it, I'm kind of curious, are there other, especially given the watershed conference, are there other venues where we want to engage people like city councilmen, city council members, forgive me, that's what I meant to say, I know we're working with the administrations for those different cities. I think that's a great place to start. I'm curious, is there a way or a platform to engage them and additional constituents above and beyond the CAC?
Yeah, so we'll have actually a separate, so this is like the work that Bar's doing, is helping us engage with these people, and then Lauren's working on a engagement plan for citizen engagement.
That's kind of where I was
including,
curious.
city leaders and residents as well.
I might have missed it. In fact, I didn't catch that part. So that's
Yeah, she might have, now I can't remember if she included that in her update, but I just met with her about it, so she's developing that plan. We're actually gonna send out an RFP to see if we can engage some help on that
Very
as
cool.
well, so we'll have more information on that in the next month.
And I had just gone back and referenced a couple of the plans. They've been really good, you know, in earlier packets. And I just was like, oh man, I feel like there's something there that I'd love to see more of. And so it's good to hear that Lauren's doing. I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, there more will be coming up.
Any questions between this and G? Okay, so G, I really appreciate the plan and support and the communications. I'm not clear when or if these are going to be released to the public, or if they are released to the public, how to find them.
These are operation plans for the staff.
Okay, so just for the staff. And
This is for, you know, when we react to, you know, different, the operation plans are public, you know, everything is public, but this is more like a step-by-step guide for staffing.
Are they public and easy to access, do you know, Tina?
No, I mean, 'cause
poked around a couple
they're
of them.
pretty technical and related to the maintenance, like the city work, and our work in maintaining those, and operating those, but they're public data, of course, but it's not something that we felt would be worth having.
Like
on the
actually
website.
optimizing, and that's kind of what I was curious about.
Yeah, but
City staff have access to it as well. don't they?
yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it goes to the city. I'm just trying to think through, as I have some colleagues who live on different lakes in these areas. They always ask questions about them. And so as I poked around trying to find one, I can find them because I understand the board packets.
Yeah, right.
But it is challenging for somebody who maybe not know the process as well as we do find it. So that's what I was kind of curious.
Yeah, and in some cases, I mean, infrastructure plans, we don't necessarily want that to be as public as, we don't want people, and we've
I
had
can respect
people,
that.
as you know.
Yes, I am very aware.
Trying to modify our outlet systems that shouldn't be messing around with them either, so there's a balance there on what we have available.
And when I read it, I was kind of curious if that was where it was going to end, or if this was more of a, you know, again, just revamping. Okay. Last question on H, just to keep going. I love the lake monitoring. I'm curious, given the amount that we've done and the number of interfaces that we've had with the community who do have those on the lake, some working well, some working inconsistent, some have just general questions. Are there any kind of return on investment that we can run with respect to, hey, we have the data, it's actually helped us out, that we can not immediately take action on now, but just maybe roll out as we develop this data set and use it to actually refine what we know about the lake level. This is the quality of the lake levels, all those types of things. Is there a return on investment for that monitoring solution that we can point to and say, hey, this is really helping us in these areas, or helping you in these areas?
Yeah, I mean, it ties directly to those operation plans. Specifically for the Phelan Keller outlet, because we rely on those rain gauges and the lake level stations as well as the other outlet operations. So I mean, we certainly
have
definitely a return on investment, not that we've run the numbers.
I don't think we need fine tune. That's not what I'm looking for. But because we're monitoring the lakes in these areas, we have been able to accomplish these types of outcomes for you with the dollars spent. Is more what I was thinking in my head.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's a few examples that come to mind immediately in terms of how that information is used seasonally on years when we do have the snowpack. That gives us an indication of where to start, and you know, how to model and estimate what the lake levels might bounce to. During the summer, when we look at these gauges and we see water levels that are hung up, staying higher than for longer periods than when we anticipate, it's an indication then maybe we need to go out and look and inspect those outlets, you know, make sure they're not plugged, make sure they're flowing freely. So, you know, that's not something that is, you know, you can count the number of times, but it's another check that you can do from the desktop level to say, yeah, this is okay.
And I'll be transparent. This was born on a conversation I had with somebody living on Wabasso who was interested in some of these types of items, and it was like, oh, you use taxpayer dollars for those. Is it really with the return? And so I was like, yes. And I tried to explain it, but if I had some mechanism or some, like, this is how we use it, I think it would be helpful. Not that I need to represent it, normally I would just direct, but this is, again, a work colleague of mine. And so I was like, yeah, no, they're very useful. I think you can. Yeah, that's what I'm.
So I'm just wondering, Val, is this something that you're thinking would be of greater interest to maybe like the lake associations to say, hey, this is kind of a directed communication blast or general information to say, this is the sort of stuff that's keeping your property, you know?
To build on that, yes, because it's become clear in a couple of different forms in our conversations that not all the public really understands what the watershed does and the value that's being brought by some of these things. These are very visible. And before I joined the board, I recall not only Tina, but others having to talk to our lake association around like, hey, this is important and there's good things to do and we use it to make these judgment calls. Obviously you capture half the audience generally when you do that, but I think having awareness in this regard for something that's notable, that has something on shore, people can see it, and being able to talk intelligently to the lake association, homeowner association, whatever, would be helpful. I'm not trying to action it. I think their data is there. It would be a low priority task, but I think it would help us as we engage the community for some of these things. And that's my 2 cents on it. Your explanations were great. I was like, ooh, we're going up to this plan. We're going to engage these people. They should see that there's some value. There's
And it may not even require kind of a return on investment sort of thing, but just kind of in general, this is a protection for your home. And this is the
okay. The outcome is like raising awareness.
Yeah, they see the numbers, but then, okay, those numbers they're used. They're used for these things and helping them understand, even if you don't go farther than that, but just letting, okay, they're used to inform these decisions for the monitoring for this purpose, may help to address some of those questions.
I think it would be wonderful as another communication tool. We're being liaisons to the community sometimes.
And actually, it's proactive.
I know.
Rather than kind of
Hey, you have flooding and we're only going to come.
Yeah, we can work with Lauren maybe on some sort of communication plan for.
I mean, I could see another great video submission for the watershed conference, right? Just going, you know, it's
no, it does lend it to be a good video.
I'll get off my soapbox on it, but I've had more conversations the last couple of months about it, surprisingly, and explaining why that tax dollar goes to this particular one for somebody who lives on Owasso. So it just was interesting. My next question's on S.
I have a question on O.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Trumped.
Go ahead, Laura.
I did, Tracy, not to call you out, but you had said in your earlier comments and the attorney report that the Fish Creek property that you'd received all 3. I think you just said all.
She just said 2, and we just.
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, so isn't there one neighbor that we just have not been responsive? And that person continues to be non-responsive? Is that correct?
Tracy can update you on that. Have a certified letter that we're sending to him. Just so he's.
Yeah, we decided. Yeah, we were just wanting to make sure they know that we're interested. We really haven't gotten any response, so that kind of tells us that they're not. But we thought we would do certified. I don't know if we did certified and regular mail. And just to let them know, I understand we probably can still accomplish what we need to without access, although it'd be much better if we had access there. So I think that letter was ready to go out if it didn't already go out.
Yeah, I don't think it's been out yet, but will go out shortly.
Yep.
And then after they've been duly notified by certified, are we thinking we would wait? A month or something, if we don't hear back from them, then they just aren't interested and we'll proceed?
Yeah, well, we're not gonna be constructing for a while yet anyway, so
There's some time.
there's time for that,
Okay.
yeah. But basically what the letter says is we have easement already here, and so we're gonna still construct our project on our easement. Without purchasing of that additional easement area.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So just a quick question on O, sparked by the photo. It's a huge difference in what it started off with, and so just a question whether or not there's been any feedback from the adjacent
Yes. There have been. I would say, so yes, was very drastic. I got a lot of calls right away. People, I think we did the most outreach of this project, but it just, even when I went out there the first time, drastic. So portraying that to the residents was, I think we did our best, but yeah, it's definitely was drastic. So there are a lot of calls, people overall are supportive. The calls stopped, I would say maybe the first couple of days people call up and then it stopped. So we did another mailing and then updated our website with info and acknowledged that, yes, this is drastic, but this is what's, reminded everyone of the intent and the purpose. And I would say one of the biggest complaints, not only that now they can see all their neighbors, but the church's parking lights were very bright and seemed to be a little bit, I don't know what, like tilted the wrong ways or something. So the church is working with their lighting, the kind of maintenance team. Yeah. Because they shine bright in the homeowners' windows now. And of course it's winter, so they're it's dark at 4:30. But the church has started making those changes, and hopefully people are supportive.
It's a significant difference when you see something on plan versus a picture of it, just.
Yeah,
It really is.
Yeah.
I answered my own question on S. So I don't have any more questions. Anyone else?
Yeah, where are we at?
We're at O.
Yep. I think it's near the end. The U, V. Oh, here we go. W. Paul, looks like you're on. I'm just curious that it sounds like you've been considering potential what's next for restoration projects, and sounds like you have some good ones going. I'm just curious if there's been any more thought, conversation with Schletty wetland. Is that something we're gonna let set, or is that kind of not gonna happen, or do we know?
That is a discussion that I am happy to have with anybody that's interested in having it.
Yeah, it's still on the list, I would say. We were kind of putting it in the wetland restoration category. So after Cottage Place was completed, so it'd be a little different than what Paul's been looking at for other sites, but it's definitely still, I would say. We'll talk with Paul about that too, but.
I think our next big one, oh, sorry, Paul, but I think last month you saw the Central Park corridor feasibility study, so we're gonna look at that. Just because Roseville was an interested partner, so that'll be kind of our next big one, and then Schletty's definitely still on the radar.
That was my thought too, is to see how the Cottage Place wetland goes and maybe have lessons learned from that. And in my update there, that was more looking at what's the easy quick wins that's not going to take a whole lot of even board action or years of planning to put together, because we don't have anything huge on the docket for next year. So part of the thinking is just to catch up on maintenance on our existing sites and look for those kind of quick wins where we can expand in areas or smaller projects to take on.
Sure. Sounds good, thank you.
So just a quick comment, I love seeing the Tamarack Nature Preserve on the list, so I hope it keeps rising up on your priorities.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how all of their natural resource management pans out in Woodbury. And then I'm excited, Paige could talk more, but we're meeting with some city public works folks in a couple of weeks to kind of introduce our new natural resources team and tell cities kind of what we do and why we do it.
Other questions on program status? So moving to the manager comments, next month's meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, sorry, on why, the CAC?
Yeah.
So there were, at the very end, there were a question there, I guess under C2. The group would like to continue all the annual items and are open to board of manager priorities for 2025. So I just wanted to just say, from my perspective, I think that there's two things that that are high up on my personal list, and I don't know what others thought about or think about this, but one is definitely this, obviously, the watershed management plan. It's more than just the CAC. It's definitely their connections to the larger community. And then hopping back to the earlier topic about the legislative event, I think this is an interesting opportunity to not for the board and the CAC, I think the larger watershed community to have a vested interest, or at least an informed approach on what's being done or what they can. So just my two comments.
Very cool. Manager comments, next manager meeting, any comments you'd like to highlight? Covered the legislative event. We're going to make sure that we show up because especially in chaos, it's nice to be a beacon of light. Anything else?
Yeah, I would like to go to the legislative event.
Yeah, you let us know if you can make it. That would be wonderful. We can try our best to schedule something toward the end of the day if necessary. If there's a time that's better. Very cool. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Seconded.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your participation today, and thank you for the permit review. That was very enlightening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.